The night was a thick shroud, enveloping the world in an inky blackness that swallowed everything in its path. I gripped the steering wheel with sweaty palms as my headlights cut through the darkness, creating a narrow tunnel of visibility on the desolate road ahead. The only sounds were the hum of the engine and the occasional creaks and groans of the old car as it navigated the winding, forgotten highway. I was driving through an unfamiliar stretch of countryside, the GPS signal lost long ago. The yellowed map on the passenger seat seemed as outdated as the ghost towns marked on it. My phone, devoid of signal, rested in the cup holder like a useless relic. An unsettling feeling clawed at the edges of my consciousness, whispering that I had strayed into a place forgotten by time. The road twisted and turned like a serpent, the trees on either side looming like silent sentinels in the obsidian night. The moon hid behind thick, oppressive clouds, casting an occasional feeble glow upon the landscape. The air was thick with an unnatural stillness, broken only by the low moans of the wind. As I rounded a bend, the headlights caught a glimpse of a dilapidated sign that read, "Welcome to Harrow Hollow." It sent a shiver down my spine. I didn't recall seeing any indication of a town on the map. A quick glance at the gas gauge showed it flirting with the E, and the nearest gas station seemed to be just a few miles ahead. I hesitated for a moment, debating whether to push on or turn back. The car sputtered ominously, as if urging me to seek refuge in the eerie town. With a resigned sigh, I pressed on, my eyes fixated on the dim glow of lights that appeared in the distance. The outskirts of Harrow Hollow emerged like spectral apparitions. The buildings, hunched and skeletal, whispered of a forgotten era. The streets were narrow and uneven, and the flickering street lamps cast long, ominous shadows that seemed to dance to an unseen tune. Pulling into the gas station, I noticed it was devoid of any life. No attendant, no other cars, just the eerie hum of the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. A faint smell of decay lingered in the air, like a hidden secret that the town held close to its heart. As I filled the tank, the silence grew oppressive, broken only by the distant howl of a lone wolf. The gas pump clicked off, and I turned to face the town square. It was then that I saw him, a shadowy figure standing beneath the flickering streetlight. He wore a tattered trench coat, the collar turned up, obscuring his face. A hat pulled low cast his features into deeper shadow. Instinctively, I felt a chill run down my spine, but curiosity overcame fear, and I approached him cautiously. "Lost traveler?" The figure's voice, a low rasp, sent shivers down my spine. I nodded, suddenly aware of the isolation that surrounded me. "You should not have come here," he muttered, the words hanging in the air like a dark omen. Before I could inquire further, the figure melted into the shadows, leaving me alone in the dimly lit square. A flicker of movement caught my eye, and I turned to see the townsfolk emerging from the darkness. They moved with an otherworldly grace, their eyes hollow and vacant, fixated on some unseen point beyond the veil of reality. Unease settled in the pit of my stomach, but I dismissed it as paranoia. I continued my journey through the spectral town, the oppressive quiet broken only by the echo of my footsteps on the cobblestone streets. The windows of the decaying buildings stared back at me like vacant eyes, and the flickering street lamps cast long, distorted shadows that seemed to riddy in the night. As I reached the town's center, an ancient church stood in solemn silence. The doors creaked open as if beckoning me to enter. A cold wind whispered through the empty pews, carrying with it the faint echoes of a long-forgotten hymn. The flickering candlelight cast dancing shadows on the faded murals that adorned the walls. I found myself drawn to the altar, where an ornate, dust-covered book lay open. The pages, yellowed with age, spoke of an ancient ritual that promised to unveil the secrets hidden within the shadows. A sudden compulsion seized me, and before I could comprehend the consequences, I found myself reciting the incantation. As the last syllable left my lips, the church trembled, and the air crackled with an otherworldly energy. The flickering candles burst into an unholy blaze, casting a sinister glow upon the walls. I stumbled back, the weight of what I had unleashed pressing down on me. The church doors slammed shut, trapping me in the suffocating darkness. The whispers of the townsfolk outside grew louder, their haunting chorus echoing through the night. Panic clawed at my chest as I realized that something malevolent had awakened in Harrow Hollow. The shadows within the church coalesced into grotesque shapes, moving with a life of their own. Faces, twisted and contorted, materialized in the inky blackness. I tried to scream, but the sound died in my throat as the shadows reached out, their icy tendrils wrapping around me. Time seemed to warp, the boundary between reality and nightmare blurring. Faces from my past surfaced in the shifting shadows, their eyes accusing and hollow. A cacophony of anguished whispers reverberated through the church, each voice a forgotten soul yearning to be heard. A figure emerged from the darkness, its form shifting between human and something otherworldly. The trench-coated stranger from the gas station materialized before me, his eyes gleaming with a malevolent light. "You have awakened the veil of shadows," he intoned, his voice resonating in the cavernous space. I pleaded for release, but my words were swallowed by the darkness. The figure extended a shadowy hand, and I felt myself being pulled deeper into the abyss. The church seemed to fold upon itself, its architecture twisting and contorting in ways that defied the laws of reality. The shadows whispered secrets, tales of long-lost souls and the sins that bound them to the veil. I became a reluctant witness to their torment, a spectator in a spectral theater of despair. Faces, distorted by suffering, flickered in and out of existence as the shadows danced their macabre ballet. The townsfolk outside grew more agitated, their unearthly wails echoing through the night. The church walls pulsed with a malevolent energy, feeding on the collective suffering that permeated the air. I was trapped in a nightmare, a prisoner of the veil that hungered for the essence of the living. In the midst of the swirling darkness, I glimpsed a portal, a tear in the fabric of reality. Desperation clawed at me, and I hurled myself toward the rift. The shadows resisted, their ethereal grip tightening, but I fought against the invisible chains that bound me. As I passed through the portal, the church collapsed in on itself, swallowed by the insatiable hunger of the veil. I found myself on the deserted highway once more, the night sky a tapestry. Faces, twisted and contorted, materialized in the inky blackness. As I drove through the dark forest, I felt nervous. The moonlight made spooky shadows on the trees. I usually liked adventures, but tonight felt different. It seemed like the forest was watching me, and I felt like I shouldn't be there. The road was narrow, and the branches looked like scary fingers reaching out. I tried to distract myself by turning on the radio, but it only made weird noises. Turning it off made me feel even more alone. As I drove, a strange woman appeared in front of me. She wore an old torn dress and her hair covered her face. I stopped the car, startled. She pointed down the road, and without a word, I followed her. The deeper we went into the forest, the stranger things became. I started hearing whispers, and the trees seemed to move. It was like the forest itself was alive and trying to tell me something. Suddenly, a thick fog surrounded the car, making it hard to see. I felt like something bad was going to happen. The woman disappeared, and I was left alone in the eerie silence. Then, I heard a strange drumming sound that seemed to come from everywhere. It made me feel even more scared, but I kept driving, feeling like I had no choice. Eventually, the fog lifted, and I saw an old mansion in front of me. It looked abandoned, but something drew me towards it. Inside, the whispers grew louder, telling me about the tragic history of the place. In a dark room, I found an old journal that told the story of a family trapped in the forest. Suddenly, the candle went out, and I felt trapped too. In a mirror, I saw the woman again, and I realized she was part of the forest's curse. Together, we confronted the darkness that held the mansion captive. In a final showdown, the curse was broken, and the souls trapped in the forest were set free. The once scary forest became peaceful, and the woman disappeared, her purpose fulfilled.